I
still have neighbors like that.
In the 80s, a movie would just as likely side with that guy. I'm glad this movie was woke enough not to.
Yeah.
That guy ended up being the idiot that he appears to us in 2023.
And it's funny, whenever, he was going on that spiel, I was thinking, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe the car would have actually started, but maybe it was because it wasn't a Kentucky Harvester.
Yeah, you should have had a Kentucky Harvester.
Everybody needs a Kentucky Harvester.
Why don't you have a Kentucky Harvester?
Kentucky Harvester is the way to go.
If you live somewhere where it's snowing, why aren't you driving a Kentucky Harvester? Hello, and welcome to Judgmental Horror Junkies. I am one of your co-hosts, Reno Dino Valentino, head doctor at the Asylum of the Insane. And with me as always is my lovely co-host, Goreship, the ship that sails the river Styx, delivering the souls of the damned in 20 minutes or less or your money back.
That's a new addition. Thank you.
I've decided to switch it up every once in a while.
I'm used to the first part, so I like the extra addition of the moniker that I'm adding a chargeable service now.
I threw a little comedy in there because, we are discussing my movie pick this month, and it is Gremlins, a comedy horror from June 8th, 1984, and one of my top 5 horror movies of all time, because when I was 9 years old, when I was 6 years old, my grandfather taped it with a good old-fashioned VCR off of HBO, and I watched that thing till the tape ran out. I watched that movie a million times.
See, I watched it a lot growing up, mainly because, there's at least a decade age gap between us. Mm-hmm. So you had already done and seen it for a while. Yeah. I saw it just when it was replaying on TV like a regular thing, constantly. By the time that I was 6 years old, yep. You were already in fucking high school.
Yeah.
And I was just watching on TV, and it was one of those things where, when you watch it on TV, you can see the censorship, but even then, censorship back in the 90s wasn't actually as censored as it is today. So there wasn't a lot of overlap when I rewatched this movie of what was, cut out or edited down. Maybe some curse words.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because something I learned while doing a little research on this movie is... one of the executive producers was Steven Spielberg, and by this point he was high on his own supply, and he had just had 4 hits in a row. He was killing it. He E.T. and Indiana Jones, both of which make cameos in this movie.
Yep.
And at this point, there was a PG rating and an R rating. And Gremlins is one of the reason a PG-13 rating came into existence. Because movies like that, and Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're melting Nazis and throwing them into the airplane blades.
It's definitely not a PG film.
Yeah, people were complaining about the murders.
It straddles the line.
And they were Steven Spielberg basically said, hey, make a PG-13 rating. And because he had that much clout at the time, the rating system was PG-13 rating it is. We will do that for you, Steve.
It's funny that you mentioned Spielberg in this, because when I was doing some research, I found, a not-so-kind history of Gremlins and the story of the Gremlins.
Yeah.
And Spielberg doesn't get painted in the best light from what I read.
Yeah.
Mainly because he had absolutely nothing to do with this movie in terms of directorial writing. No, he had nothing.
Just a producer.
His name is on the title credit. Steven Spielberg Presents.
Executive producer.
Yeah, that's it. That's all he did. He bankrolled some
him
of the
and
movie.
2 other guys I'd never heard of. But his name, of course, on top.
Their name's not on the header.
Yeah.
The guy who even wrote his name isn't even on the header. His name is the 5th name that shows up. Joe Dante, who I didn't know this till, afterwards. He made one of my other favorite childhood movies, Small Soldiers.
Oh, I love Small Soldiers.
Yes.
That is a very good anti-capitalist, anti-war work of art. I
love
Small Soldiers.
He also made something that is a travesty to the American nation and honestly should be condemnable by firing squad, and that was he made the live-action Looney Tunes movie with Brendan Fraser, which is credited as being the downfall of Brendan Fraser's career.
Never seen it?
That was another tidbit that I didn't know, and I wish I didn't know that about Joe. I was like, no, Joe,
look, not everyone,
Brendan.
Not everyone always hits. And Brandon survived it. He's back. Watched The Whale. Won a lot of awards. Heard it's good.
But mainly, I was confused by this because I grew up thinking that this was a Spielberg movie.
Mm-hmm.
I always was like, oh, what are some of Spielberg's greatest films? Jaws, E.T., Indiana Jones, Gremlins.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, he actually had nothing to do with Gremlins other than bankrolling certain parts of the film production. And because of that, he had such an ego back then. Let's go ahead and call it a spade, egomaniacal, because he was riding high off of being Hollywood's #1, director boy. Yeah. That he's like, I can literally put my name on a movie and
you can say one thing he did for Gremlins. It's he held it to that high standard. Like, he wasn't going to let them put his name on it unless it met a certain standard. Like, if he did anything, it was bitch a whole lot that it wasn't good enough. Like, he did do that.
My other part
and we did get an amazing movie out of it.
My other part of it was trying to give, a little bit of benefit of the doubt to Spielberg. Let's say his heart was in the right place, and he's like, Joe, if we don't put my name on this movie, it's not going to sell. No one's going to care about this movie.
Yeah.
But if it says Spielberg presents, everybody's going to want to watch this movie.
Yeah.
Maybe he liked the film so much.
It was a powerful name.
Yeah, maybe he knew somewhere. This wasn't in any of the reading that I found.
Yeah.
But because most of the reading kind of paints him as a dick.
Yeah.
Let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
Spielberg is not presented in a fun light in this particular backstory. But let's say his heart was in the right place, and he was like, Joe, I love your story, but it's not going to go anywhere unless I back it, and my name is the header. People think it's my movie. It's almost identically what happened with Tim Burton and A Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, he didn't make that movie, but everyone, thinks, oh, Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Yep. He's not the guy who made it. I forget the man's name, and it really bugs me because I also love his work because he just did a awesome movie that I watched on Shudder called Mad God, which took him 20 years to make.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a stop-motion film, just like Coraline,
that's exciting.
Yeah, it's a good one. We should definitely check that out on a future episode, just in case.
Stay tuned, kids.
But,
it's the guy, what's his name, that wrote Hunt for Red October?
Bill Tippett.
No, the guy that wrote it.
No, I was talking about the movie. The movie who did Coraline and Night Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Why can't I think? I fucking know this guy like the back of my hand. I can't believe I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, that guy ended up writing he wrote a lot of books that were like military-style books, like Hunt for Red October. But then he started Tom Clancy. There it is.
Oh, there we go.
But then he started having other people write his books, but it was still Tom Clancy's the book. And then it was just at the very small letters, like, actually written by this guy. It's like when a wrestler writes an autobiography. Yeah. It's like, oh, this guy wrote this book. And in real small letters, you get who actually wrote it. This is that, but with Gremlins.
And speaking of Gremlins, let's get into a little bit of the backstory and synopsis of it. I got it right here for us. So, Gremlins. Released on June 8th, 1984, directed by Joe Dante, also known for the Twilight Zone movies Small Soldiers and Looney Tunes.
Holla. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
The story goes, a gadget salesman is looking for a special gift for his son and finds one at a store in Chinatown. The shopkeeper is reluctant to sell him the Mogwai, but sells it to him with the warning to never expose him bright light, water, or to feed him after midnight. All this happens, and the result is a gang of gremlins that decide to tear up the town on Christmas Eve.
Yep.
Now, there's a little bit of problem with that story because, obviously, as we get into watching it, there was no actual selling involved from the shop owner.
Yep.
It was a little bit of wheeling and dealing from the shitty-ass grandson.
Yeah, well, you say shitty-ass, but the man had to pay rent. He was like, Granddad, we need the money. But this was in Chinatown, in New York. Rent's expensive, even in the 80s.
This is the part where I get a little, yes and no. Because in the adage of Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
That kid didn't give a shit about that town.
And that's why what happened.
He needed $200.
That's why what happened. They should have known. Because that's one thing that we're going to circle back into the very end. And it's what Mr. Wing, the owner of the shop, says to them in his final goodbye.
Oh,
the
heartbreaks.
That really speaks to me today because
there's some modern day correlations.
Yes, there much is.
So we have Hoyt Axton as Randall Peltzer. He is our gizmatonic, our lunk-headed inventor, of which the stereotype has been done a million times. But Gremlins was the first place I saw it, so it will always stick in my heart as the funny bad inventor. Phoebe Cates, love of my life, as Kate Behringer. Love interest, Billy Peltzer, who is played by Zach Galligan, and that's our 3 stars. We got a lot of other cameos, including
a young Corey Feldman
as
Pete Fontaine.
Yeah, the best friend of Billy Peltzer.
Did you know this? I didn't know this until I was looking at the casting. Howie Mandel
did
the voice of Gizmo and most of the Gremlins.
Yep.
I had no clue that Howie Mandel, knowing him for what I know him from whether it be radio personality.
This was one of his breakout roles. Like, he would not have gotten Bobby's World, the cartoon, without Gremlins. Without being Gizmo.
So again, this little bit of research I did, I was like, wow, my mind's blown after all these years. I'm 31 years old, and I'm just now finding out about stuff that I've known since I was 5, or thought I knew since I was 5.
Yeah, I will say, quick shout out to Jerry Goldsmith, who did the music. The music in this is awesome. I still occasionally am like, dun 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 dun. I do the Gremlins theme because Jerry Goldsmith, the man, is a talent. Look at his musical accolades and all the movies he's done, and this one was no different. Like, perfect musical accompaniment through the whole film.
It's kind of like how I feel about anytime Clive Barker makes a movie, he always finds the right composer to make the appropriate scores.
And music is so important, not just in this film, but in any good film.
It helps set the tone of a movie and keep the flow going.
Absolutely. Like, what would Jaws be without the theme from Jaws? It's one of the most would be shit.
It's one of the most synonymous things that people,
it's so simple,
who even if they don't really know the Jaws movie, they know dun 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 dun,
yeah,
dun 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 dun. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And horror movies, I'm not going to say more than other genres, but definitely, like, you have a certain musical tone that connects to certain... Michael Myers has his theme.
You can thank Alfred Hitchcock for that, by the way.
Yeah, yep. And it started with Hitchcock. And the tradition is carried by Jerry Goldsmith in this film.
When I jumped into this movie watching it, before I hit play, this was my initial remark. I wrote this down and I was like, I hope this is as good as my childhood lets me remember it to be, and that it isn't another classic that aged very poorly. And you know what? I was about 50% right.
Yeah.
I was about 50% right.
There's a couple parts that
questionable.
Very questionable. We start with a nice Asian stereotype in the first 4 minutes.
I said immediately shows racial caricatures, depiction of Chinatown, and the stereotypes the 80s really pushed, and it added to the heavy accent from Mr. Wing, where he spoke in a Yoda style. It was
he had the Fu Man chew, he had the old man accent. Yeah, he was.
And it was one thing that kind of was brought to the forefront of my mind. I was like, there was a fetishized imagery of Asian culture during the 80s, and it was probably why my childhood, all throughout the 90s, really loved ninjas and samurais and Asian culture to this day. It's something that, like, really has impacted me, and I didn't even think about it, but it was all based off of the wrong reason, a caricature of a race.
Well, you culture. Also, even, and this is a lesser caricature here, but no less apparent in this movie, is the grandson that has abandoned the ways.
Yeah.
Like, this kid looked just like Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like, he even is dressed the same. Like, he looks like Short Round. Yeah. And it's a very common thing where, like, the grandfather's like, you must respect tradition. And the grandson's like, no, I want to enjoy the New York Yankees baseball team and actually make money so we don't get kicked out, Granddad.
And so we have Mr. Randy Peltzer starting off with the opening narration telling you a story.
Yeah.
And this whole movie, I forgot, was a story retelling. So some of the stuff throughout this movie could not be quite accurate because it's just off one person's memory.
Yeah.
Who, mind you, wasn't even there the entire time. It's
kind of weird it's his story and not Billy Peltzer.
Exactly.
Like, why is Billy not telling these stories? And I guess because Randall is the beginning and the end of the story. Like, he was there for the start, he was there for the finish, and shit, I almost forgot. One quick thing that I wanted to mention before we start in is that this was the first of what began an entire genre of small monster movies. Gremlins was the first that inspired later films such as Ghoulies, Critters, all of those. Like, Gremlins, June 8th, 1984. They get credit for
Do you remember
starting that genre.
There was one niche one that came out when I was younger, and it might have just been a 90s one, but this kid who basically had, like, living miniature dinosaurs. Like, the dinosaurs look like toy figures. But
I missed that one.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the name of it. I'm going to have to look it up, but it was another fun one that was supposed to be like a monster horror movie, but it was like little tiny dinosaurs. Oh. But it was a fun family adventure and
I'd
stuff.
watch that.
But,
but anyway, back to the show. Yeah,
Randy.
Randall Peltzer is looking for a gift for his son, and he's looking in Chinatown. He wants something unique, something weird.
Let's talk about who Randy is as a person first before we get to what he's doing in Chinatown. Randy is the classic depiction of the American dream chaser with the next big invention, trying to simplify life for all Americans and people across the world. His heart's in the right place, but his eyes are bigger than his brain.
And he's also the combination of the traveling salesman and the inventor, the screw-loose inventor, whose inventions don't quite work the way they're supposed to.
I was going to say snake oil salesman because he's obviously like trying to peddle something that he knows it doesn't work.
I don't believe that. I believe he always thinks, this time I got it. Every time he's like, yeah, I think I got it this time, and he is always wrong. But Randall seems like a nice guy. I don't think he's like a snake oil salesman. I think he's just very dumb.
All right, well, we get.
I want to say stupid and not
well,
evil.
He's very stupid, especially with his language and his choice of wording, because he's in this china shop, and he's looking around trying to sell Mr. Wing his new invention, which is the bathroom buddy. And the bathroom buddy has all your utensils, like a toothbrush.
Peltzer, if you ever get it worked out, I'd buy one. It seems pretty good. I mean, once he gets it worked out.
But then he says when he's trying to picture, he's like, you wake up with a case of the dragon breath.
And then you hear a gong.
Yeah.
And it zooms in on the dragon statue.
And Mr. Wing's just like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's obviously a poor choice of words because that was a racial connotation.
But at least they comment on it. At least it's not like accepted.
It's more
at least at least you know he put his foot in his mouth. Like he even is like, oh shit, like what a dumbass thing to say. One thing I like about this is most of the time when there is that kind of like racism and wrong-headedness, it gets corrected. Sometimes with Gremlins driving a truck through your house, but we'll get there.
Yeah. That was actually one of my favorite points that I was going to make down the way. But Randy, you're right. Maybe not intentionally trying to come off that way.
Yeah.
His heart is in...
And he immediately notices. He's like, fuck.
He genuinely has his heart in the right place. He seems like a good dad and a good husband.
Yeah.
You know, just a goofball who really wants to do something right with his life. Yeah. And I'm sure the reality is he's probably a little bit depressed because nothing ever really works out the way he wants it to.
Yeah.
But, of course, Mr. Wing's like, I really don't have any place for that. I don't need that.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, what's that noise over there in the back corner? Oh, it's a Mogwai.
And it's singing.
Ooh.
That beautiful Mogwai song.
And he's like, how much? And he's like, not for sale.
Yeah.
Shuts lid.
Yeah. I'll give any price. And he's like, no. And the kid's trying to talk sense into his granddad.
Granddad, we need the money.
Like, I would like to eat tonight. I've got this crazy idea that I could have food. And so he's like, hey, Granddad's being unreasonable. Meet me outside.
Give me a couple minutes. I'll talk to him.
So Randall waits outside, and the kid comes out, and he's like, hey, do you want it or not? He's like, yeah, but your granddad. He's like, look, we need the money. Do you want it or not? And Randall, of course, does. So he's willing to overlook the fact that granddad don't know. What granddad don't know, don't hurt him.
My thoughts on this was, of course, me being me, I'm like, not a very kid-friendly person. I'm just like, damn those kids. Damn those kids. And
look, without those kids, we wouldn't have a movie.
Exactly. I literally said, damn kids always doing sneaky shit. I get if he realizes that they need money for his family, but he straight up stole from his grandpa.
Yeah, he
didn't think about the consequences.
Dirty.
Even if he told the 3 rules about no sunlight, especially sunlight, it kills them, don't get them wet, and never feed them after midnight.
Yeah.
But even after saying that, you can tell that Rand just goes, yeah, sure, whatever you say, kid. He literally just brushes it off because he doesn't take that shit seriously. Yeah. Now, he doesn't take it seriously in kind of a disrespectful way to the kid.
Yep.
But credit where credit is due again, he does tell everyone when he brings the creature home the actual rules. Which, based off of his interaction and kind of nonchalantness, rubbing, just blowing it off, you would think that he would just completely negate it, and that's why the movie would happen.
Yeah. But no, it's just people being clumsy around it. And I like... This is a very good opening 4 minutes. It gets you interested. You hear the 3 rules, which are going to be important through the whole film.
And you know that the rules aren't going to sustain. You know that the rules are put there because they're going to not be followed, and that's what's going to be the catalyst.
And then we get our typical 80s opening with a pop song, Christmas,
It's
go, coming down.
Cue to the snowy Midwest town with a winter wonderland full of kids playing with snowball fights and people laughing, and of course, a cheapskate cop trying to get free trees because they have a badge.
I wrote, police trying to get free shit. I forgot how ACAB this movie is.
Yes.
Because the cops through this entire film are garbage humans.
Suck.
Yeah.
They suck.
But they are the perfect stereotype of the typical small town cops.
Yeah.
In fact, this town is the perfect stereotype of the typical small town.
We
also get the Indiana Jones cameo with Rockin' Ricky.
Yeah.
There's a billboard with a radio DJ who you will hear throughout the movie, and he's dressed up like Indiana Jones, but he's like this nerdy kind
It's
of
actually Spielberg on the fucking
nerdy
billboard.
Spielberg lookalike, Rockin' Ricky.
And I thought it was funny when the cop was like, you could spare one of these trees, right? And
it's like, I paid for mine, Mark, or whatever the cop's
And
name.
he's like one of the politicians in the town.
Yeah.
He's like a wealthy guy, and the cop's just like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And it was funny as shit because
we get our first Corey Feldman, although he's in a tree and you can't tell.
it's like, why are you dressed like that? Don't ask. It's like, obviously his dad's got him in a
making him
mascot.
advertise.
Yeah, a mascot costume. And I know this is probably wrong to say, but then when we cut away to the scene revealing our main protagonist,
our hapless star, with his out-of-touch racist neighbor.
Yeah, Miss Deagle.
No. Before
Oh,
Deagle.
no, sorry. Well, Deagle's also his neighbor, but,
Well, no, she lives in the nice
you're
house
talking
down
about
the
Murray.
street.
Yeah,
I'm talking about McMurray. No, Murray, who is... At first I thought he didn't hate foreigners, he just hated foreign things. Because he was like, man, foreign cars, foreign parts, foreign...
Yeah.
So
my thought was like, well, first when we see the protagonist, I was like, why does he have this Ted Bundy looking ass, VW bug? He's frozen to death.
Yeah.
And then to make it even worse, when he stood up, I was like, oh shit, he kind of looks like a Ted Bundy actor.
Yeah.
Like a Ted Bundy lookalike. And I was like, that's probably not what I should be thinking watching this movie.
Non-intentional.
But of course, that's where we go. And just like you, I was like, and here we go with the typical 80s racist speak from the neighbor talking about stupid foreign cars and American made would never do that.
Should have bought a Kentucky Harvester. It's a Kentucky... I like how he says it like 3 times. He's like, that's a Kentucky Harvester. It's a Kentucky Harvester.
All I could think about when he said, oh, American cars would never do this, I think back to like my first 3 cars I ever owned, which were all American made.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Ford and Dodge, those were my first 3 cars, and you know what? All 3 of them died. So easy. They had so many problems, it was ridiculous. You know what? I've had less problems with foreign-made cars.
Oh, well, in the 80s, there was a real pushback, because it was when people started... Like, a lot of industry started moving overseas and was being made in other places, like in Japan and in China. And so the American pushback was like, American, everything is better. Buy American, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can buy a Japanese car for cheaper, but it'll be a piece of shit because
we were in
Japanese people don't know. Foreigners can't make cars. And, of course...
There was no truth to that. The start of, like, Cold War era. Yeah. We were also in Reaganomics.
Yeah, we didn't like things that weren't American.
Yeah, that anti-American notion was very popular and normalized. Yeah, I get that,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, so in the 80s, this neighbor was absolutely everyone's neighbor. Everyone had a neighbor like this.
Yeah. I still have neighbors like that. I still have neighbors like that.
In the 80s, a movie would just as likely side with that guy. I'm glad this movie was woke enough not to.
Yeah.
That guy ended up being the idiot that he appears to us in 2023.
And it's funny, whenever, he was going on that spiel, I was thinking, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe the car would have actually started, but maybe it was because it wasn't a Kentucky Harvester.
Yeah, you should have had a Kentucky Harvester.
Everybody needs a Kentucky Harvester.
Why don't you have a Kentucky Harvester?
Kentucky Harvester is the way to go.
If you live somewhere where it's snowing, why aren't you driving a Kentucky Harvester? Yeah, you say it so many times. Man's in love with it.
I was like, is this an ad placement? And then immediately afterwards, when Billy is walking to his job at the bank, I see, you gotta love that classic Burger King ad placement. Yep. I don't know if you noticed it, but it was the most obvious thing.
And it was an old-timey Burger King sign. He does the, what I call the small town jog, where you don't want to run, but you actually should be running, because you are that late.
Yeah.
He's doing the weird, I'm not running, I'm just jogging very quickly.
The creepy power walking down the street with my dog thing. Like, I got places to go, but, at the same time...
It was bring your dog to work day at the bank, so,
By the way, just a reminder, Billy reminded me that clip-on ties are classy. They're very classy, okay?
In the 80s, they were like...
They were like the it thing, yeah.
It's like, look, I don't have time, I'm late. You need at least one clip-off tie for when you're really, really late. And hey, he's pulling Phoebe Cates, so I am not going to give him any advice on anything. He's winning at life, and I am losing.
You gotta love the introduction of the pseudo love interest or semi love interest, because there's a little bit of flirtation right off the bat. Yep. Just handing him a letter, and they have the awkward almost close face exchange.
The whispering in his ear to sign it. And
here we go.
Then we meet Mrs. Deagle,
Mrs. Scrooge,
who is very much Scrooge. She's very much the bad guy from It's a Wonderful Life. She is the evil Scrooge character that is in every holiday movie in the world. By the way, this is a Christmas movie. It happens at Christmas. Deal with it. It's way more a Christmas movie than Die Hard. Fight me in the comments.
Bruce Willis has straight up said that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie and that people can get over it. So, if John McClane is saying it's not a Christmas movie, I have no reason to believe.
You can't fight John McClane. So, Mrs. Deagle comes in and is mad because...
I want to talk about before she comes in, though.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because, the lady... The lady with her sick coughing kids. By the way, fuck them kids for not covering their mouths. Even this is pre-pandemic stuff. Fuck them kids for not covering their mouths and coughing all over.
It's definitely definitely a different vibe in 2023 when you see someone coughing without covering their mouth.
And she's like, but I don't have enough money yet. Can we get just a little bit of extension? She's like, what do you think this is? Charity? She's like, but what about my kids? She's like,
we and the bank have the same goal:
making
money, not support a bunch of deadbeats. And she's like, but it's Christmas. And this petty bitch stops. She's almost in the bank. Stops, turns around, walks back to this poor lady and says, I guess you know what to ask Santa for, then, don't you? And we see that lady walk away. The kid's like, I'm hungry, Mom. And she's like, yeah, me too. Mrs. Deagle is quickly established as our villain in this film.
That was actually straight up from, the story of Scrooge. When he has that interaction with his worker, and little tiny Tim is sickly, and he's like, but I can't feed my kids. He's like, fuck them kids.
She really, all she would have, if she wanted... It was one step away from going, don't they have workhouses for these children? Because that's what Scrooge said, and I'm kind of surprised Mrs. Deagle didn't. Instead, she comes in, by the way, holding a snowman head.
Like a plastic severed snowman head.
Oh, no. Porcelain.
Oh, porcelain.
And that is why she's upset, because it is her Baravian porcelain snowman art that she bought for a very high price. And she says, I have no proof, I don't believe this, but she says Billy Peltzer's dog broke it. And Billy's like, no, I didn't. And then, like a goddamn psychopath, she starts talking about cooking it in her dryer.
Yeah, she's like, if I find him, let me have him. Let me get a hold of him. I'll put him in a real quick spin cycle in my dryer.
On high heat. And the guy next to her is like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, what the fuck? And it kind of shows you how much power she has in this neighborhood. That, in this town, she is, the ultimate. She owns all the property. She is the realtor. And,
fuck the landlords.
Fuck the landlords. No one will step up. Even this guy is hearing her cooking a dog. He's like, oh, yeah, they'll do it. He's trying to emaciate himself.
You talking about the old rich white guy?
Who's like, yeah, they'll do it.
Or
she knocks out of the way to yell at Billy Peltzer.
Or his little, sidekick lap dog, Jerry?
Oh, no, the bank guy's not out yet. Okay. Because what happens next brings them running. The dog...
jumps out!
Very smart. He's tied up under. He hears her talking about cooking him. He unties his own knot, very smart dog, dives up over the counter and attacks her. And at this point, I'm like, hell yeah. This dog, the French don't need guillotines. They just need this dog. He will eat the rich by himself.
I gotta say, though, I had a good chuckle at her fake acting hurt from the dog just jumping on her and
oh, my heart!
I have such a bad heart!
Yeah, she stops to yell at Billy and then goes back to bitching about how
goes to the Wicked Witch of the West voice, and then I'll get you in that little doggy of yours.
And then,
oh, my heart! I'm so fragile!
Yeah, the manager comes out and his right-hand man,
Gerald!
Yeah.
My initial note was, when all that went down, I literally wrote word for word, Gerald sucks balls and he's a creep.
Yep.
And that's immediately followed up later, right after this happens.
We're going to the bar. Yeah. So, Billy, showing off his artistic skills, is drawing himself as a knight, slaying a dragon with Mrs. Deagle's head on it.
Which is really good. It's really
amazingly
D&D level artwork.
Yeah, and the guy is... talking to him, like, oh man, that's great. Like, you really captured her eyes. Like, everyone in this town knows that she's a horrible person. And then, yes, Gerald from work comes in, who's the boss's right-hand man, and basically tells Billy, like...
You're a loser.
Well, he's like, guess who almost got fired today?
It was you. It was you. And if it was up to me, it would have been you.
Yeah, like, the boss has such a giving heart, because it's Christmas. I would have fired you.
He's like, look, I'm already manager by the time I'm 21. By the time I'm 23, I'll have Edgar's job.
Yeah, I'll be a millionaire, blah, 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 blah.
By 25.
What are you... And here's the thing. Gerald is the typical preppy 80s yuppie. So I actually think that Gerald thinks he's doing Billy a favor with this tough love approach. He's like, what are you doing, Billy? Come on, Billy. Get your life together. Start tearing people up from the flow up so that you can make some fucking cash.
And then proceeds to very creepily hit on fucking Kate in front of Billy.
People never hit on your waitresses unless you are way better looking than Gerald. Ironically, if you've ever seen Fast Time at Ridgemont High...
Yeah, he was jerking off to Phoebe Cates.
Yeah, so this is... He carries this love for her into every movie he goes into. And again, I was about to say, it was
like the greatest thing Gerald ever did was play a movie role where he got caught jerking off to the girl he was jerking off.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great role.
yeah, I mean, what does it take to get that kind of role? Like, how much was he paid? Because, I mean, if I have to fake jerk off on camera for a large chunk of money like he did, sure, why not?
I'll do it. I'll get paid.
But yeah, then you know...
Kate's not having any of it.
They get to just talking and walking, and, you know, like, all right, that's the dude she's after. Gerald, he can fucking kick rocks.
Right. She even does the touching of the clothes, and that lets you know
she's kind of marking her territory or where her interest lies.
Yep. So he comes home to his mom watching It's a Wonderful Life.
Now, as a little bit of a tidbit from a cinematography standpoint,
please,
I've learned these things from my film classes and stuff because I wanted to be a director. I wanted to be an editor and work in the film field originally when I was pursuing college degrees.
Yep.
That's what I set out to do before I switched over fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have a hard time watching movies without noticing some of these things. So when Billy walks in and he shuts the door, the sword falls down. That's actually a foreshadowing of the sword coming into play in the future.
I wrote Schrodinger's sword, like it's Willy Wonky, because once the sword falls, you're like, oh, is that going to play a part better, or is it not? It's Schrodinger's sword. It's also Chekhov's gun. It's Chekhov's sword as well, because if you introduce a sword in Act 1, you have to golf club a gremlin into a fireplace in Act 3. That is the rule of Chekhov's sword.
And it's funny because you mentioned that he comes home to his mother basically in the kitchen, you know, prepping dinner. She's chopping onions watching It's a Wonderful Life.
Chopping onions? And she's saying it's a sad movie, and you're like, you're chopping onions, lady.
No, not only that. It was that. He's like, hey, is everything all right, Mom? Because she's looking very, you know, despondent, kind of down, and kind of worried about what's going on. And she is having issues with Mrs. Deagle too. She says it very subtly.
Yeah,
you know,
she's like, Mrs. Deagle called again, and before she can say anything else, Daddy's home.
But before that,
know because the sword falls again, you hear it.
But before that, whenever he's like, "Are you all right, Mom? You look sad." Like, you know, she's like kind of wiping her eyes. I'm like, she's cutting onions.
Yeah.
The fuck are you expecting? Do you really think that someone's gonna be happy chopping onions? I know my ass has never had.
And I also wasn't sure if she said sad movie or bad movie. And I thought it would have been funny if she said bad movie, because it's like, oh, we're a Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life's a shitty Christmas movie. Watch our Christmas movie. It's way better.
That would be ironic, pot shot for literally no reason, but it would be funny.
Yeah, but I think she said sad movie.
And of course, like, before Dad comes home, you know, Mom's like, hey, can you crack these eggs? And he so hesitantly goes to the weird chicken pecking egg cracker.
Pecks his hand.
And you know, he slides the egg in place and hits the thing, and it's like about takes his thumb off. Yeah. And then all the other eggs just crack and fall into the bowl. He's like,
It's another Peltzer invention that is not working properly. The longest reoccurring gag in this movie is Peltzer shit not working.
Yeah.
The house is filled with his inventions.
Except for they work when they need to work.
Yes. Every once in a blue moon,
they do work in the movie.
Every once in a blue moon, you get one. Much like his car, which starts the one time he needs it to.
And only the one time.
Yes. So Randall comes home singing, putting the sword back and singing a Christmas song and with a present. And we get our Gizmo reveal.
A little fucked up that Billy shakes it with Gizmo inside.
And he's like, whoa,
don't shake it. He's like, it's a puppy, isn't it?
Here's the weird thing, though. before that he says it's a bird cage and then shakes it. I'm like, dude, if it is a bird, you're killing it.
Yeah.
Billy has no idea how to take care of pets. He proves that over and over as this movie goes on.
Little Ted Bundy in him.
Yeah.
But it was funny because... So they sit down. Dad's even smart enough to like, hey, honey, can you dim the lights? Yep. And surprisingly, the light dimmer actually works.
Exactly. They work when they need to.
Yeah. And, of course, we get the unwrapping and then the slow lid reveal. And then you get a jump scare. Yes. You get a jump scare from Gizmo.
And at the beginning, you're like... Is this even a horror movie? Because we're a good 25 minutes into the movie.
I also didn't realize how long this fucking movie was. It's almost 2 hours long.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
it doesn't feel like it when you watch it. Like it's very. I think it's very well paced, even though the Gremlins don't show up till about the halfway mark.
Yeah, and that was another crazy part. I was like, I paused it so I could make a snack and check the mail. And when I paused it, I was like, oh shit, I'm only literally at the halfway mark, and the action is just now starting to pick up.
Yeah.
So I was a little shocked here because I was like, wow, this movie's been just kind of going by and you don't pay attention to it because that's how well rounded it is.
Yeah, it's good storytelling. 30 seconds in, we're already breaking the rules. The mom
takes a
by the way, goddamn MVP. We'll get to it later.
Yes, we will.
His mom, with the exception of the explosion at the drive-in or at the movie theater, kills way more gremlins than anyone else in this movie.
She is a badass.
She is a beast. She is a beast, and I am going to say it right now. Best fight scene in any horror movie. We'll get to it.
Yes.
But for now, she fucks up.
Well, I think it's second to They Live with Roddy Piper.
I'm not even sure it is, but we can discuss it in about 15 minutes.
Okay. So...
she takes a picture with a flash. Does anyone remember this? Polaroids, where the picture comes out instantly. It was big in the 80s. The flash hurts Gizmo. And this is when Randall Peltzer decides, I got some explaining to do.
Can't do that because...
Here's the 3 rules.
Gizmo jumps right into his arms. So there's a little bit of bonding. There's a little bit of bonding there that Gizmo would kind of just jumped in and was nuzzling to him and like, bright light, bright light, bright light.
It's very cute.
I love the little voice. It's a little odd that it's Howie Mandel doing it now that I know. But
I wonder if that kid had actually not just explained the rules, but explained the downside of each rule. I feel like this would have all been done so much better. If the kid had said, okay, don't feed it after midnight, but if you do, the next day there'll be a big green cocoon. Take a katana and stab it like 80 times, and then the problem will be okay. And then don't fucking get it wet again, you dumb shit. But no, the kid doesn't. He just says the rules. He doesn't explain why the rules.
I will say this. The dog looked hella jealous, though, when Gizmo showed up.
There's a couple shots where I'm like, the dog's getting forgotten.
Especially when it's like, man, this could be, the next best man's best friend thing.
Yeah.
And the dog's like, huh?
Yeah. There's a very cute shot of the dog not being down with that. The Peltzer pet, they call it.
And this is kind of where it takes a turn. Mm-hmm. Because after, we get the Gizmo reveal, we get a drunken Murray talking.
Oh, wait, before that, we get
Gizmo
TV rotting Gizmo's brain. He's watching Romance with a dude from Gone with the Wind. Some race car movie.
Sorry, I forgot about that. I did jump
and Pete shows up, and
he accidentally knocks the water vase onto Gizmo, and it looks so painful.
Oh my god.
He's just screaming, and they're just kind of nonchalant about it. I was like, what's going on?
That was the one part where I was like, guys, you had to react more. You had to be freaking out. But instead they're just like, what's going on? I don't know. But yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, it was horrifying.
And you know what? I gotta say, I think Billy is a real fucking dick throughout this movie for several things that he says and does.
Yeah.
Mainly because I get the first time that the water spills on Gizmo, it was a fucking accident. It was a lot of water.
Yeah.
And that's why, those 5... evil, I call them the Bad Bunch. Gremlins.
Yeah,
the Bad Bunch
That's a good name.
were created. Yep. I refer to them as Bad Bunch throughout the whole fucking movie.
That's smart.
And Stripe is the leader.
Yeah.
I had to make a note because I didn't want to forget it. I was like, I think Billy's a real prick for putting Gizmo through that again when he later takes Gizmo to the professor just to have him put water on him again and make another fucking clone.
Yeah.
It seems like a very painful dickhead process.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we get the 5 and...
It's forcing childbirth, on somebody, and that's not cool. Gets consent. Although, honestly, the evil ones give consent, because they want to make as many of them as possible. Yeah. They're bastards. I will say at this point that the puppet work is amazing. At no point in this movie, with the Gremlins or the Mogwai, did I ever get taken out of it and be like, oh, these are not just real creatures running around. Like, it is top-notch puppet work.
And
like, they look so good. Like, there's a couple of claymation scenes that are a little iffy, but with the exception of that, they look so fucking good.
There's only one.
When they're coming out of the pool?
Yeah. No. Not the pool, but
it's not that
when
one?
they're coming into the town. It's not the pool, dude. It's
I thought it was when they were exiting the YMCA.
It's a shittily drawn, painted backdrop of the what's supposed to be downtown. It's them like walking from an alley, and it's just a bunch of mini little gremlins and this really shitty painted scene. I made a note of it.
Yeah,
that's the only animation.
The rest of the time they look, because they use puppets. At one point, now this is Wikipedia, so you take it with a grain of salt. They were going to try and use monkeys, but they couldn't train them properly.
Yeah.
They were going to like put makeup on monkeys, but they couldn't train them properly, and the animal rights people were like, "I don't think you should do that," and they ended up not doing it.
So we finally get to Murray being drunk.
Wait, no, I get two more things real quick.
What did I skip over? I might not have thought they were as important.
Well, they aren't super important, but it is the scene with the attempted dogicide where happens, and it's very clever how they do it, because all you get is one little sly smile from Stripe. And then it cuts to the dog strung up. And they think it's Mrs. Deagle doing it because she's threatened that dog like 10 times a day, every day.
Well, actually, you get the sly smile from Stripe.
Yeah.
And then you like just see him kind of look over. And then all of a sudden it cuts back to Billy being like, hearing the whining from Barney, the dog.
Yeah.
And he's like, huh? Where, you stupid dog? Yeah. And to your knowledge, the way that they filmed it, Stripe never left the bed. He wouldn't think anything. But obviously there's a time jump.
Yeah.
There's a time jump because next thing you know, Stripe is all like,
yeah, I'm innocent in sleep. Yeah.
And then you find poor little dog, almost
strung up. And
for good reason to think it was Mrs. Deagle too. Mm-hmm. Very good reason.
But it's interesting because the dad, Randall, is like, hey, I know I locked the door. And they were like, and there were no footprints. So like the clues are leading, like the calls are coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
But there's also a little funny thing where they're trying to make coffee and it's just coming out as like syrup and like chocolate fudge.
Oh god!
And the mom's like, we can't drink this, and the dad's like, oh, this looks perfectly good, and they both laugh, and I'm like, okay, he can laugh at himself when his inventions don't go the way they're supposed to. He's not like drink it, it's fine. Like he's very aware of like that coffee came out as sludge.
And later in the day, Billy meets up with Kate finally.
Oh, it's okay, finally. One more thing, and then we are at that meeting. This is when he takes the Mogwai to his former teacher.
The professor. And
what I wrote was, black man in an 80s horror movie. Not long for this world, most likely. Because, man, if you're a black dude in a horror movie, especially in the 80s, you are gonna die. And probably sooner rather than later.
I think the reason why I missed part of this is because I was so zoned into the movie for a second that I forgot that I was taking notes.
It's fair. Now we are with Mr. Futterman.
So Billy and Kate are talking. She's walking him out of his bar. He's drunk as shit.
Yep.
And this is where we get the title of the movie said for the first time.
Yep.
And he This is what I wrote, and it was kind of like a depressing take. And I said, we get the movie title said finally, but I was unaware. It said in an almost bigoted blanket statement of resentment for anything non-American, and his blaming them for their current struggles with a greedy bank and failing economy.
Yep.
And it's really depressing that's where the gremlin name for the movie came from, is a racial connotation that this man is projecting. He's like, there's gremlins in all the foreign products. Yeah. They do it on purpose.
They make little ones for your watches. Yeah. It turned out that the gremlins in the 1920s in World War One, he says this is in World War II, but actually started in World War One. The British Air Force, when their planes would not work, they would jokingly blame it on gremlins. It's also the reason that famous Twilight episode with William Shatner, where there's a thing on the plane, like ripping the plane up, is like a little gremlin.
Okay.
It's a flashback to that. But during World War One and World War II, so he's not wrong. But whenever they would have troubles because you're under the stress of war times. So when your tank breaks down or your plane breaks down, it's a high stress situation. They would blame it on gremlins as a joke to lighten the mood. So he's drunk. And he's talking about WW2, like the Japanese would send gremlins into their equipment to cause it to break, which of course is ridiculous.
And at least he had enough intelligence left in his drunken, riddled brain to be like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't drive. I should probably walk this off.
Yeah, like
I don't want to ruin my Kentucky Harvester.
Yeah, exactly. Kate, all the credit in the world. She's the good bartender who's like, you shouldn't drive. And her and Billy talk him out of getting behind the wheel. He's a nice night, I'll walk. And Kate and Billy also take that advice.
And this is another part that brings me back to Billy's an idiot. Mm-hmm. Because when they're walking, I don't know if it's accidental naive side of him, or if he just is so, like, it's clueless to the real world.
It's very small town of him.
Yeah. He's like, he's just like, oh, I don't get why he's like that. I thought Christmas was the happiest time of the year for everybody, no matter what.
And Kate drops that incorrect but often believed idea that the depression suicide rates are highest at Christmas. They're actually highest in the springtime, because a lot of times people who are suicidal, not that there are no suicides during Christmas, obviously, but a lot of people who are suicidal in the winter are like, things will get better in the springtime. And when things don't get better in the springtime, then they kill themselves.
Maybe it was during that time period, holidays, where maybe in the 80s the suicide rate during Christmas time was a lot
It was
higher.
Definitely the common belief. I don't know, like I know today it's springtime. I didn't go back to the 80s.
Now,
it is possible that's true.
For this being a Christmas movie, this shit got really dark, and there's this one line she says in response to Billy's stupid remarks about everybody should be happy. And it's a quote that has stuck with me, all throughout this week. Because I'm like, again, this is supposed to be a Christmas movie. There's supposed to be some cheer and banter. But she said, while everybody else is opening their presents, they're opening their wrists.
Some people are opening their wrists.
And I'm just like, damn, no wonder why this is PG-13.
And we find out later why Kate is so anti-Christmas. And she's got a damn good reason. Yeah. She is, but like Billy, and I like this because he's a small town guy, and he's small town thinking. He's like, oh, you don't celebrate Christmas? Are you Hindu? Like,
which was a little out of pocket.
I would have thought he would have said Jewish first, but I mean, but for whatever reason, a little out of pocket, but it's perfect small town, right? Like, that is small town as fuck. And then she calls him on it. She's like, look, God, you say you don't celebrate President's Day, no one gives a shit. Say you don't fucking celebrate Christmas, they treat you like a leper.
Yeah.
And she's
Which is
fucking
true.
right.
Which is true. You still get that kind of reaction nowadays. But the thing that blows my mind out of this whole thing...
I wrote Billy almost talks himself out of sex.
Well, the thing that got
during
me
the walk home
is, I was like, even after all the anger she clearly had towards his very, very small-mindedness and small-town view of what happiness was during holidays and what the holidays should be, he still got a date somehow.
Yeah.
And I was probably more taken back by the fact that he did get the date.
Small town, small dating pool. I mean, what? It's him or Gerald. Like, those are your options here. Or Murray. Like, you can take the drunk home.
Yeah. But
small town, small dating pool. Plus, he did, he does apologize. And, he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. Once again, Billy is small town dumb, but at least he fucking learns from it.
I'll give him, all right.
Yeah, he learns from it. And I'll give him that. Yeah.
So he gets home, he's chilling, he's relaxing, having a little snack, watching a movie, doing some homework.
The Bad Bunch start fucking making a racket.
Yeah, and they basically trick Billy into feeding him.
It's only 11:30. He throws him some chicken.
Yeah, they trick him.
Wink,
like,
wink.
I think it'll be all right. It's only about 25 till midnight, so let's go get him some chicken. They throw it in.
Yep.
And in that same time, you cut back to the professor with the other Mogwai that he cloned that's in the cage.
And you see it's 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah. And so you're like, wait a minute. Is this a jump?
And at first
forward?
you think it's a time jump.
Yeah. And then, the professor leaves. He comes back. He takes his bag of potato chips.
But he left a bit of sandwich.
And that's all the Mogwai needed.
Yep.
He eats the sandwich. And next thing you know,
next day it's all goo. Everything's goo balls.
I straight up said it looks like a xenomorph was getting ready to be
good
born.
Pods. Very good pods.
Very, very much taken from the Alien franchise and the style that they made it.
Yeah. And the mom is instantly like, did you feed it after midnight? And he's like, no, of course not. And then he looks and he sees that it's still 11:30.
And
he looks at the clock.
Has been cut.
He's like, Mom, what the hell is going on here?
Now, a little side note on this. The dialogue from the movie that was playing the night before they became eggs, it really keeps driving home this racial disdain and subliminal hatred for outsiders. Mm-hmm. And even through the movie, the hatching egg monsters that the Gremlins were about to become, it also comes off in the tone that it's the same way they keep doing stuff throughout the film. I mean, it was very 80s, mm-hmm. and they were basically screaming like, they're coming, they're everywhere, they're in your home, they're right beside you, and you can't even tell.
Yeah.
It had a very weird racial connotation.
I believe that was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the movie that they were watching. Like that black and white
And
film.
it was funny because
either that or the Pod People or something.
If it was, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where I was like, I know that it's just a very subtle thing that they're sliding in, and like it's supposed to coincide with the Gremlins going through the pod change and stuff, but given the conversation that was just had by Murray and you know how he's all downtrodden and blaming someone that's not American.
Well, I like it because you can try and look at it from McMurray's point of view. Like, Gizmo came from the Chinese, and it was a virus that spread out amongst the world. So Murray was right. But the old man, at the end of the movie, set your ass straight. He's like, no, this was nature's gift. And like all of nature's gifts, you fucked it up. This is on you. This is not a race thing. Stop trying to make it a race thing. Fucking Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Murray. Like, it's fucking stop. It's not. So I like that, like, it sort of seems like the movie could be viewed that way, but the last bit you're left with is like, no, white guys, this is on you.
See, when you're a kid, you don't notice that, but now that I'm older and I'm watching it, I'm like, I can't help but see it.
Yeah, and you feel a little better because, again, it hasn't aged perfectly, but it's aged better than a lot of 80s movies.
Oh, yeah. And it does come from the 80s culture where they kind of fetishize the Asian culture. You know, like...
Yeah.
I love this movie, but...
The ancient wisdom
Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh,
that was a very heavily racial-driven movie, and you know, stuff like that kind of added to it, especially with Chuck Norris basically stealing the Asian culture and becoming an American ninja. Yeah, that's a whole other story on its own. But finally, all the eggs hatch. Yep, and it's funny because when the professor is in class... I love it.
With that heartbeat video, it's such a good like accompaniment to the hatching. Like, that was creepy. Like, the movie's mostly comedic, but there are a couple parts where it is disturbing, and that's one of them. That heartbeat video with the inside the box and it's shaking and then falling off the desk right when the bell rings.
And all the kids hurry up and get out of there.
Well, he rushes them out because he's like, this might be dangerous.
Don't go back over here. Don't go back over here.
Oh, if you want to give me a Corvette for Christmas, that'd be great. Goodbye.
Yeah. And, you know, Pete tries to talk to him about the Gremlin thing. Yeah, he's like, no, not right now.
Because he's worried. He doesn't know what the hell is in that. Yeah. Which is so good.
I thought that the smart choice is that to keep the lights off for a film perspective, but on the practical side, I was like, bro, why didn't you turn the lights on? Mm-hmm. That was my thought. Yeah. You know, for the movie side of it, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. Adds to the eeriness because you can't quite see the fucking monster.
One of two things. Either A, Billy told him about the rules, and one of them's no bright light. And he's like, well, this new one, because he doesn't know it's dangerous at this point. He thinks it might be, but he also thinks it might be just a bigger, fuzzier version of the cute thing I was playing with last night. So he might be keeping the lights off because he doesn't want to hurt it.
Well, he compared it to like a butterfly cocoon.
And it might just be he got really excited.
Yeah. and so he goes and he gets a Reese's or a Butterfingers.
Snickers.
I thought it was a Butterfingers.
Butterfinger later. They're eating Butterfingers in the theater. Oh, okay, this is a Snickers bar.
So he goes to Snickers. He's like, I got this for you. Takes a little nom. He's like, here. And then he goes to hand it to him underneath the desk, and then the hand grabs him. He's like, what the? Ah!
Yeah.
And that's the last thing you see.
Then we cut to the mom and the piece de la resistance, the Christmas song of choice. Do you hear what I hear?
They're, hold on. That's not quite just yet, because actually Billy shows up to the school.
Yes, and finds...
He opens the door and he finds the professor with a syringe in his butt. So I'm not sure if the professor is dead or if
he's definitely dead.
Yeah, I mean, you just see his head. And
the joke of that is that earlier he took his blood with the syringe.
Yeah.
And so the gremlin took that personally and gave it back to him in spades.
And I noticed, like when Billy walks in, the gremlin's in the corner and you just see the hand pop up when he goes to reach for the phone and it scratches the shit out of his
Another
hand.
Great scare.
Yeah, another good jump scare. And I was like, oh yeah, this is technically a horror movie.
This is where the horror part comes in.
And it really, that whole area of the school with Billy interacting is perfect.
And the first aid room. Oh.
So he goes to reach for a phone. Claw scratches his hand wide open. He sees the hand reaching out, and it grabs the apple. The thing takes a bite and goes,
it throws it.
Then it grabs a glass beaker and starts nomming it. It's like, And my first thought was like, oh, they just eat garbage. They'll eat anything but healthy food.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll eat candy. They'll eat popcorn. They'll eat glass.
They're creatures of id. They're all just like their most base emotions and base feelings, which make them bad people.
It was so funny because then he starts rushing to the medical office to try and find people to help him, and as he's like standing there by the cabinet, the little fucking shit.
To this point, we have gotten flashbacks to the mom and to them hatching and fucking around in the attic, but we've had no clear shots of the gremlins. This is the first clear shot we get.
You see Gizmo being tortured, like he's strung up, and they're like throwing shit at him.
And you see one pick him up, and they throw him in the laundry chute. But yeah, you get no clear shots of the gremlins until you get the best jump scare in the movie, in my opinion. Billy is like in the medical, in the first aid room. He wraps his hand up. And he leans back and rests his head on a cabinet, and the cabinet next to him flings open, and you get your first shot of the gremlin, and it is terrifying.
Oh yeah,
it is a monster, and it just starts throwing shit.
And now this is where we finally get to the point where Billy runs, finds a phone, calls his mom. He's like, "Mom, something's going on. You got to get out of there."
They've hatched. Get out of there, and then boom.
The classic horror movie style. The power goes out.
The gremlin in the school cut the cord.
Yeah, cut the phone line.
Yeah, which shows that they are wicked clever.
Yeah, very very funny.
Yeah, and then as soon as that happens, she's like, Billy, and then you get the Christmas music. Do you hear what I hear?
I should have said, poor Gizmo again being tortured. But Mama Peltzer had that knife ready to cut some fools up. But now we get that horror movie feel with the phone lines being cut. Then the Christmas music playing eerily. Do you feel what I feel? Yep. And she's being stalked throughout the house. It's very cool because it's a very slasher style. Mm-hmm. Because when she's walking, you just see the gremlin's shadow. But you don't see that she doesn't see it stalking her.
Yeah, the shadow work is so good where it peeks at her. And then peeks away, and then walks off.
And then, of course, she gets to the record player that, she's like, I didn't put this on. Yeah. She pulls it up, and it makes a winding down noise. And I was like, everything's really too quiet.
Yep.
Too quiet. She just keeps going further and further. She goes, and she hears something in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it's one of the gremlins from the Bad Bunch.
Eating the cookies she was making.
Yeah. She's like, nom, nom, nom. And without thinking, she looks... She runs back, and she throws it in the blender.
Wait, before that, though, she makes a sound, and one of its ears perks up, and she's like, oh, shit, those big ears aren't just for show. Those things can hear like a motherfucker. It perks an ear up, and it's like...
Well, yeah.
And then it goes back to eating its
when
cookie.
She leaned around the corner, she was like... And then it was kind of like, huh?
And then, and it gets into the blender. She doesn't put it in there. It's in there licking batter out of the bowl, and she just kind of goes up behind it, and hits the button.
Well, she pushes it the rest of the way in.
Okay, she pushes it the rest of the way and then hits the button, and we get our first
of blood and gore, black and green blood gore.
Yeah.
It was
this
so
is
good.
the PG-13 reasoning,
and then she starts getting attacked by the other one,
it's frisbeeing plates at her.
And it was right after she fucking turns around. She's like, oh no! She grabs the TV dinner tray,
the cookie sheet that the cookies were on, and she's using it as a shield.
No, it's a TV dinner tray. It's got legs.
Okay,
it's like one of those folding TV dinner trays.
Okay, I thought it was the
that you sit at your couch with. No.
All right.
She grabs that. She's using it as a shield, and she's using the knife as like a sword. She's battling up, and then she's like, die! She stabs the
looks
fucker
like
in the gut.
One of Leonidas's 300
for sure.
She fights like a total trooper and just butchers that one. And then another one attacks her from behind, and she gets, bug spray, I think?
Was it bug spray?
She sprays some aerosol in its eyes, and she just backs it into the microwave, slams the door on it, and cooks it. And we get to see it just melt and explode in the microwave. And at this point...
That's 3 out of 5, right there.
This point, I'm
like... 3 out of fucking 5.
She should have been the person that... If she had been the one that went after Stripe... This movie would have ended there.
Oh, big
because
time.
She would have axed that motherfucker.
Yeah,
she was a beast.
She didn't do the typical horror movie trope where she was like, hello?
Yeah.
She knew something was off. She was like killer instinct mode right away. And you know what? I noticed something was really funny. So after she threw the one in the microwave and she stabbed the other one in the gut, and it was just like she stabbed repeatedly and was laying on the countertop with a knife sticking out of it.
Yeah,
that one was still kind of moving around in the background as she was leaving the kitchen. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did not.
But I was like, that is so well done because it's not quite dead, but it's dying.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh.
Oh, we also missed a. Should quickly mention that Randall, he went to a
Inventors
Expo, and he took the dog. So the dog isn't here, and he's not here. But he calls at one point, and they did a time machine gag. Like, he's on the phone, and there's a time machine in the background, and it cuts to her talking. And when it cuts back to him, the time machine's gone, and, like, everyone's, like, feeling where it was and, like, freaking out. It was just a little quick gag.
I did not notice that.
It was very funny.
Because I was so wrapped up in what was happening.
Yeah, that call happened right before all this.
Yeah.
We need to mention he's gone, because he doesn't show up again till the very end.
Yeah, because that's why I was like, it doesn't make sense why this story is from his perspective if he wasn't there.
He's gone for all
events.
of this part.
He literally comes home to the aftermath.
Yeah, so she goes and she hears noises from the living room, and she sees the one of the stockings wiggling around, and she takes her butcher knife. She's going for it. She fucking just doesn't
start stabbing.
She D-Generation X slashes that, but it falls, and it was just a little robot that someone ... had wound up.
So she
to
starts,
distract her.
She starts backing up, looking around, and then you see the glowing eyes hiding in the tree.
This is the Jurassic Park clever girl bit where, like, the gremlin distracts her. So it's Sun Tzu's Art of War, man. These things are clever as fuck. So then there's a very funny scene of the tree just falling on her and her just flailing. This tree is beating her ass. She's fighting this fucking gremlin.
Right before the tree falls on her, you just see the red eyes hiding in the little bit of the bush, and all of a sudden, rah! And the tree, she's screaming, fighting, and it's clawing her face up.
She fought so well, but this fourth one got her. Like, got her with the ambush, got the weight of the tree on her so she can't defend herself, and it looks like it's curtains for Mom. But Billy, as soon as he lost connection, starts running home and gets in right at this point.
I will say this, I felt it was a bit of a slow reaction for him to come in and watch his mom being strangled, and him just be like, Mom? Oh yeah, sword. It felt
perfectly in character though, because we will see him slowly react all through this movie.
and this is another
many times you want to shake him.
Yes, there's very much thing. So he uses the sword, but the sword doesn't like cut the gremlin in half. It just swats it like a baseball bat into the fireplace. Now,
where we get another murder.
This is hilarious because that fourth one melted so quick. I don't know if you noticed. It melted so quick that nothing was left but its head.
Oh,
Did you notice that?
I thought he had beheaded it.
No.
When he golf clubbed it.
No, because when you watch it, the whole thing, the whole head and body goes into the fireplace.
Okay.
And then it cuts back, and it's just a head melted into the fireplace.
Oh.
Because you hear it going, ah, cracking and sizzling.
Yeah, I definitely.
And I thought the same thing too, but there was no body on top of the mom. There was no body stuck inside the tree. He literally just went, yeah.
I just assumed when he rolled the tree off the bottom.
And I laughed a little because I was like, that sword must not be sharp because he basically just punted it like a baseball bat.
But hey, it worked. Well, you don't want a sharp sword that's constantly falling. It's very dangerous.
Sure, it might rip your wall open or whatever. But hey, Stripe is the only one left now.
Yes, Stripe sees them, does this maniacal laugh that you will hear gremlins do. Gremlins love laughing maniacally. It's their favorite thing. And he busts out through the window, and Billy makes the rookie mistake of taking his mom to get medical treatment instead of having her back him up. Instead, he takes Gizmo to back him up. If you'd taken your mom to back him up, Stripe would have been murdered in the next scene, and we would not have got the pool party that happens next.
Well, let's talk about real quick the disrespect that Stripe handed Billy before he dipped out of there. Because he bitch slapped him, and then he clawed his chest open.
Oh, yeah.
Clawed his chest open, and he laughed, and then ran.
And then, no, that's at the pool.
No, that's when.
No, because when he sees him at the window, he blows his nose on the curtain. I thought that was the disrespect you were talking about, and then dives through the window. The attack on Billy with the chest and stuff happens.
Was that the pool?
Yeah, because
I could have sworn it was when
he's going to turn the power on, and when he opens up the fuse box, Stripe jumps out at him.
Okay,
and that's when the Stripe attack is. Yeah, he takes his mom to a neighbor's.
Oh, you're right. I didn't finish reading my fucking
He
notes.
takes his mom to the not racist neighbors, and then goes to confront Stripe with Gizmo.
Calls him the YMCA.
Yeah, and Spike does a goddamn cannonball into the water, and Billy does the first smart thing I've seen him do in a while. Gets his ass out of there. Yes.
But the fucked up part is he goes to the cops, which, you would think you would have already tried to contact, but these cops, being typical 80s cops, not reliable.
Yeah.
They do, he's just a drunk kid. He's going on some ranting and raving about monsters because he's bucking off his rocker 2 sheets to the wind.
And while they're talking...
Very patronizing to him.
Oh, they're so patronizing. But while they're talking, we get a cut of the Gremlins getting out and about and starting to fuck with people.
That was actually one thing there. It was like, fun fact about the scene with the Gremlins invading the town, it's the only stop-motion use in the film that is set to a poorly painted backdrop of what's supposed to be downtown and a bunch of animated gremlins coming forward, but it's just little tiny gremlin toys.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I liked how many of them were hopping, though. Like, you just saw them, like, bouncing up. Like, they're so excited. They're little kids. They're little kids. They're so excited. Then we see our favorite neighbor racist undone by a Kentucky American-made vehicle, which is probably the way he would have liked to have gone.
Murray and his wife are chilling.
Spoiler, they do survive because they show up in Gremlins 2. I don't know how, because the last thing we see, it looks like they're getting run down. But I guess they wanted them to live so that he can have a redemption arc where he's less racist in the second movie. And that is, as they are driving into him, that's the first time we hear what I call the Gremlins mischief theme. The dun 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 dun. That's the first time we hear it. We will hear it many more times, and always when the Gremlins are having a good time.
I straight up said, Murray gets to see some real Gremlins in real life, not just metaphorical racist ones he imagined before he and the missus get run over with his own Kentucky Harvester.
Yeah.
And it was just so funny because he runs outside and he's like, what's that? Who's in my Kentucky Harvester? Yep. Do you know how much? And then all of a sudden it breaks through the garage. He's like, it's a gremlin. It's real life gremlins. Runs inside.
And his wife, he's trying to tell his wife it's gremlins. And she's like, Murray, you're crazy. Like, even if the gremlins are bearing down on
the
him.
door gets busted down, the whole house gets mowed over. I do really want to know how they managed to get around the whole they're not dead, even though the plow just, like, basically took them and pushed them through the other side of the house.
Yeah.
It's implied, at least.
Yeah, I kind of... Well, yeah, it even shows the gremlin harvester, and it kind of does this, like it ran over something, like it hit a bump, that I thought was McMurray till the second movie came out.
And then we get a funny little tidbit of more gremlins starting to attack the town, like the one that's hiding in the mailbox.
Yeah, but first the cops are getting ready to hit the road because they get the call that McMurray had an accident. Yeah. And Billy says the creatures are making it look like an accident. And I'm like, no, the creatures aren't making it look like an accident. The cops are just really, really dumb. The creatures are just doing what they do. Like, they're not making it look like... They're not they're not Agatha Christie murder mystery people. They're just fucking off, and the cops are too dumb to figure it out. So I thought that was very funny.
Head out, we see a little bit of other gremlin mischief.
Yes.
And one that stuck out to me was really funny. The
mailbox?
Yeah, the priest goes to the mailbox, and he goes open, and he hears something, and he's like, here, you can go ahead of me, sir.
First he tosses some letters in, and as he's walking away, he hears patooey, and they spit back out. And so then he's like, I'm going to see how this other guy does it.
He's like, oh, no, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
And he reaches and he's like, someone's got my hair. Ah! Yeah. And I was like, yo, that priest is shady.
Yeah.
So shady.
I don't think he thought the dude was going to die, but I think he was kind of playing a little joke on him. Like, yeah, watch your package get tossed out again. We also get, I would have to say, the single best murder. Mrs. Deagle.
So good.
Mrs. Deagle, who I hardly recognized because through most of this, she wears a red wig, and we see her without it, and she's all gray-haired and old. And
has the awesome little,
1,000 cats,
elevator lift seat,
and
that
an
goes
elevator
down
lift
and
seat
up
to get her up and down the stairs. And she hears carolers, and she's like, "I hate carolers." I'm like, "Oh, I get it. You're Scrooge. Calm down, you weird old lady." She grabs a big old pitcher of water.
I thought about that.
Yeah, there's a couple times where they almost get Gremlins wet again, and I'm like, "Ooh, you guys got lucky." Because she doesn't pour it, because these carolers are not children that need to be sprayed with water. They are goddamn monsters. And she's like, they've come for me!
And what's funny is, like, right after she sees them, she's like, oh my god, her heart does start actually giving out. I was like, oh, I guess her ticker was really bad.
Yeah.
I guess she wasn't... Well,
yeah, this time her heart actually is going.
But then my favorite part of all this is when the gremlin outside messing with the power box manages to overpower the seat, and it launches her like a fucking Six Flag ride straight out the window into the street, and all you see is like her just splatted on the cement.
It lands right next to the cops, and they're like, Jesus Christ, that's Mrs. Deagle. That's the lady that bribes us.
And then Santa gets murdered in front of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was another really scary part. And he's like, what is that stuff all over him? Like, and the deputy starts freaking out. He's like, I really think we should go down. Yeah, I think we should go down.
Did you know that that's the guy from Breaking Bad?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. He was so young. I did not
so
recognize
young.
him until I looked at the actual face. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, and they end up dying because one of the gremlins cuts the brakes in their car.
Yeah.
And that's the end of those. And next we cut to the bar, which is...
Well, actually, hold on. Don't forget, the talk radio guy is assaulted on radio. I thought he was murdered until at the end of the movie when he comes back.
He talks about beating him off and barricading himself.
Yeah.
And this is another case where they almost do a water thing. He's like, yeah, if they break in again, we're going to turn the hose on them. And I'm like, thank God they didn't, you dumb shit.
and slowly but surely, we finally make our way to the watering hole, the bar, where Kate works.
This is a great set piece with multiple gremlins.
I loved it all. There were some of these gremlins I forgot existed.
Yeah.
And this is no offense by any means, but when we get to the opening scene, my very first thought when we get to the bar, I was like, oh, Reno would be the gremlin swinging from the ceiling.
I actually, when I was a kid and I used to watch this, I used to pick like which gremlin I wanted to be, and there were always two of them. One was the one swinging from the ceiling, and one was one in the movie theater who has a popcorn bag on each ear, and he's doing like machine gun sounds. He's like, I was like, those are my two gremlins. That's who I would be.
One thing I learned from this is that gremlins will party hard as fuck.
Hard as fuck. I would love that. Here's the thing, if they weren't going to scratch and eat me, I would party with gremlins all day.
Now, what did you think about, I forgot this one existed, but what about the Flasher gremlin who just like runs up to Kate and opens up his little trench coat that he clearly stole from a dog?
Oh, yeah. Like, the Flasher one, so 80s. The breakdancing one, so 80s. Like, there were so many that were so 80s. It was works of art.
There was the table full of gremlins playing poker, and you had one gremlin in drag who has her gremlin boyfriend pimp shoot another at the poker table.
Again, woke as fuck. Yeah, she's chilling with Stripe, and she keeps like whispering into his ear what cards the other ones have. And then she's like, and he's like, and she basically tells him that one's got a winning hand. He's going to beat you. And Stripe just like slides his cards down. He's got a handgun, which he keeps and will show up again later, and shoots the fuck out of that gremlin. They do not care about each other. That is
there was a jazz playing gremlin, like the jazz gremlin. He was so cool.
I really like the one who was doing the noir detective in the corner.
Yeah,
and then the other gremlin shows up with a duck puppet.
The puppeteers. What about the jazzercise gremlin?
That's the breakdancing bit. He ends up doing the breakdancing on the floor. Yeah, it was fucking wonderful. And then Kate, who does not need no man, this is the worst pun I've ever said probably. But Kate pictures herself free. Because she gets the camera. We use the flash on the camera again. And she just starts taking pictures.
Well,
and hits the one that's swinging from the ceiling fan. She turns it all the way up and it throws it into the beer sign.
Well, the whole reason why she figures out that light or flashes is...
one wants her to light a cigarette, right?
It won't let her because it's like...
the match is too light. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, you hate fire. You hate light.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just like, click, 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 click.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got this dude smoking 3 cigarettes, a giant bottle of whiskey, the other one's got tequila.
They are fucking hammered. Like, we see at least 5 different gremlins pass out from overindulgence.
Oh, yeah. You know what was funny? Is when Kate's running out, we get another jump scare with the ski mask gremlin. Who also has a gun.
Yeah, apparently guns, man.
Yeah,
imagine arming these gremlins and just dropping them in a country you didn't like. Like, you win the war. Like, that's it. You win. But then they take over the world, so that's a problem.
It was just funny because he goes to like shoot at her too right as she's running out.
Yeah.
But he gets blinded by the flash and the gun still goes off and almost gets her.
Yeah, she does a little juke and jive and barely dodges it.
And she finally...
And it's Billy showing up in the car. The flashing light is the headlights.
Saved by Ted Bundy. I mean Billy.
Yeah. The car, of course, stops working instantly. And they
have to run to the police station.
As soon as they get... No, the bank.
It was the bank?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They get in the car, immediately have to get back out and make a run for it. And at first she almost sits on Gizmo, and Billy has to explain he's not one of those things. Because I think she's getting ready to beat it to death with her fist. Because, also, Kate, another badass you don't want to fuck with. Kate and her mom, Billy, take them with you. Be the three amigos.
Right. As they're running through town, you see other people are being fucking tortured by gremlins.
Yeah.
You know, you have the little kids that are being chased down the street by the gremlins.
Cars driving and wrecking, and they go and run and hide in the bank.
There's one where a guy's just walking and a gremlin tackles him through a shop window. I'm like, holy shit!
Yeah, Gremlins is going crazy.
And they finally get to the bank, and I had forgotten just prior to that, the bank was under attack. And it's implied that Gerald and the boss of it got fucked up.
Yeah, they at the very least are unaccounted for.
So now they're
possibly dead.
They're at the bank, which seems to be empty for the most part.
Yeah.
It seems like it's completely just. And now we finally get the trauma reveal.
Yeah.
Kate finally reveals, you want to know why I hate Christmas? And she tells this really sad story about how when she was 8 years old, her dad went missing. And it was on Christmas. And, he had always loved to make Christmas so special for her. After 2 weeks of him being disappeared, they noticed that...
Chimney smell.
Yeah, there was a chimney smell. And so when they went to go have the... What was it? Firefighters look at it? They
expected them to... Her exact line is, I expected them to pull out a dead bird or maybe a raccoon. Instead, they pulled out my father.
Who was dressed as Santa with his arms full of presents, and when he was squeezing down the chimney, he slipped and broke his neck and died instantly.
Yeah.
And he was there for 2 weeks, rotting in the walls.
Yep.
And I thought he had just abandoned us.
And she said, that's when I learned there was no Santa Claus.
Yeah, that was a very hard one, because
fucking A.
That is, you lose your dad, you lose your faith, your innocence as a child, and you lose your believability in all things magical.
Yeah, and Christmas gets ruined. All in one fail, neck-breaking accident. I will say this, though, to put a little brighter spin on it. There's a very funny play on this in Gremlins 2, where, he mentioned something like President's Day. And she's like, don't mention President's Day. Something horrible. And he's like, yeah, honey, we don't have time right now. And they go and do their adventure. But it's a very funny, callback to that.
I can see that.
So yeah, and so they tell that sad story, and then they come out to a city abandoned.
Everyone's
no people,
gone.
No gremlins, and Billy, very wisely, is like, well, it's going to be daylight soon. They're going to be holed up somewhere dark because they fear the sunlight. And they eventually figure out where they are, and goddamn. Watching them in the theater, watching Snow White, makes me almost sad we had to kill him. Because they are having a goddamn time.
I had to write this down because I got a good chuckle out of it. Once the movie actually kicks on and it's Snow White, I've noticed Gremlins are just kids watching Snow White and chilling with, finally. They got kids. Candy, they got popcorn, and they got a movie. That's all they needed to chill the fuck out.
That's how you keep kids' destructive urges. You give them a movie and some candy and calm them down. Yeah, and Zach Galligan's reading of the line, they're watching Snow White, and they're loving it, is the best line he delivers in the whole movie. It was so confused, and I also thought, and this is me reading too much into it, but having them sing along with the hi-ho, hi-ho, is the last little bit of innocence that they retained from Gizmo.
Yeah.
Because Gizmo loved to sing. And even though they're these hideous monsters now, their hearts are still being touched by this Disney film. And I was like, oh, don't kill them, Billy. They don't mean no harm. But luckily, they can change, Shale.
Luckily, the innocence that they had distracted them long enough for Billy to come up with this genius plan. I'm going to go into the basement part of the theater. Yeah. I'm going to turn and break the gas valve for the main unit.
Because one of them used to work there, so they knew where it was.
And I'm just going to go ahead and light some fire, and we'll wait for this shit to blow up. And of course, perfect timing as always. Stripe's like, I need more snacks. And the one gremlin is always like, milk duds.
Yeah, he gets to leave. And the one who is a parody of, I think it's Tubbs, the Don Johnson's character on Miami Vice, wearing the Hawaiian shirt, looks over, he's like, milk duds.
He kept saying milk duds, and
Yeah,
he's
he
like,
said it
fine.
Yeah.
And he goes.
So Stripe goes to get some milk duds for his boy, but there's no more food.
So he sniffs, and he sees there's a candy shop right across the street.
Well, there's a department store with a neon candy sign. He's like, oh, I'm going to get some candy. So he goes across the street, unbeknownst to Billy and Kate, who have set up this boom boom. He does the typical thing with the shirt that you light one end, stick the other end under the door where the gas is collecting, and then get the hell out of there. Unfortunately, Gremlins don't know about movies that are more than one reel long. So the reel ends, and it's a white screen.
And it can see them
and you
running.
can see them behind. And that is just a clever way to make a chase scene.
Now,
like, he catches them running, and it's a beautiful scene of their shadows. Like,
which is just a bunch of the puppets stacked up, jumping up and down.
Coming towards the screen.
The behind-the-scenes filming of it was basically they put a bunch of puppets on sticks.
Yeah, and just were up and down.
Yeah, put them on a trolley that was sliding towards the screen.
Yeah, it was
so basically
good.
They're pulling the trolley with people puppeting the things going up and down to make it look like multiple ones.
And it looked perfect.
It was, and I can understand why you might have thought that was animation, but it was a practical effect, and it looked phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, almost all of it was practical through the whole movie. And then
I don't think I've said this enough. I love practical effects. We've talked about it on previous episodes. Practical effects will still win my heart over nowadays more than
over
any
CGI,
type of CGI
when possible. But yeah, and them cutting through the screen, just gorgeous. Like them, you see the screen and them like pressed up against it, and then they're slashing with their claws and chasing them down the hallway. Some of them wearing upside down popcorn buckets on their head like mask.
One of them, and this is one of the funniest parts. So when they get the door slammed on them, I never noticed this. It's right before the building blows up. Literally, it's just a split second. There's one that's standing in the back that has the kitchen knife from Billy's mom.
Mm-hmm. You know what he's
doing,
doing,
and he's wearing underwear over his face.
But he's doing the Rambo. He's doing the scene from Rambo with the machine gun, but with the knife. Yeah. So he's like shaking around.
I didn't notice that he has a knife. He's like, and he's got underwear over his face.
He's wearing some undies.
I was like, what in the fuck? And then boom, goes the
beautiful explosion. Gizmo has to cover his poor little eyes because bright light.
Little chunks of gremlin falling out the sky.
They think it's all handled, but then Kate looks over and sees that there's one left in the department store, and Billy's like, oh, of course it's fucking Stripe, the leader. Of course. The hardest one to kill.
And so when they chase him into the department store, I laughed a little bit because this is when I noticed Billy can't fight for shit, man.
He gets his ass handed to him. But first, we do get a nice shot of Stripe, his arms full of candy on a skateboard going yum, 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 yum. And I thought, man, you really can't have an 80s movie without a skateboard, can you?
It was the ending. Oh, also, fun fact.
And the E.T. cameo. Of the little E.T. plushie.
Did you know that this being a Steven Spielberg Presents production, executive produced, one of his major contributions, besides adding his own little, like, hey, I made these movies into the movie that he didn't even actually make, was the town. Did you know the town that they filmed it in is Back to the Future's town?
Yeah.
It's the same town set.
It's a Hollywood backlot that they use for small town USA.
And I only noticed it once they ran out of the theater and you saw the clock tower.
You could see the clock tower.
You saw that main pavilion from Back to the Future. I was like, oh, this is just recycled. Yeah. I thought it was full circle because Spielberg. And,
it is the Hollywood backlot small town that they used for so many movies in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, we get the Billy's sneaking around and he walks by some stuffed animals. The one in the center, Spielberg, is E.T. And we get a very cool shot of Stripe peeking out from the stuffed animals, seeing Billy kind of nodding, then shoving his head back in, which was very cute.
Playing some mind games with him, fucking with him.
Yeah. Also, can't have an 80s movie without a skateboard. Can't have an 80s horror movie without a chainsaw.
I was about to say, I always loved, even when I was a kid, I always loved that visual of the gremlin with the chainsaw.
The little gremlin, big chainsaw. Yeah.
Coming after him.
And Billy gets a baseball, which was what he was wielding.
He had a baseball bat, and he was trying to fight against a chainsaw with a baseball bat.
Well, first he was trying to fight against baseballs with a baseball bat, which made more sense.
The machine got turned on,
Yeah, he hit him right in the back, and I was like, that had to hurt like a motherfucker. Yeah. So, Spike turns on the baseball shooter. It hits him right in the back. He falls into a bunch of shit with the baseball. And, he gets shot with a crossbow, too.
Oh, in the arm. Yeah, in the arm.
Stripe has.
All right, so
right before saying bye, Billy. So he knows his name. They got a history.
And it was funny because he jumps up and he bitch slaps Billy.
Yeah.
And he cuts his eyebrow open. He's like, oh, fuck. And right after getting hit with a baseball. Yeah. And then he runs and he hides and he climbs up and he's like, I have a crossbow. And he's like, oh shit. Shoots him with the crossbow.
Yeah, gets him Billy in the arm.
Picks up the fucking bat and he's going to go swing at him again. And he knocks him.
First he tries to shoot him again with the crossbow, and Billy grabs a radio that was nearby,
and threw it at him.
blocks it, and then does a chuck shot, like a basketball chuck shot.
And knocks him out of the fucking thing.
And then he falls back.
He's like, oh shit. And then he hears the chainsaw cranking up.
And his eyes get what? Again, great acting by Zach here. His eyes get huge.
The Stripe comes through the middle of the clothes rack with the chainsaw.
Great scene. Tries to chop Billy. Billy gets his bat up in time.
And that bat held a lot longer than it should have.
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. It held a lot longer than it should have.
And Gizmo have separated at this point. Kate's looking for light.
Yeah, trying to...
Finally gets him at this point to save Billy. Once again, ladies be doing it for themselves. Billy, you're kind of dead weight here.
He gets blood, he's like, ah! And falls down. And I laughed so hard at this. So Stripe falls down with the chainsaw after being blinded by the bright light. And it just drags him away.
Yeah, because
like, all they had to do was just attach the puppet to it and let it ride. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's what they did.
And it bonks him into a wall. And he's doing it. Even does the cuckoo bird sounds. Because it is still a comedy. And then Gizmo, while Kate's
driving in his little Stuart Little car,
he's reliving that car scene from the TV from earlier. Yep. It's even playing in his head. And he is driving the pink Barbie convertible that my sister had.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Kate, unfortunately, while she's flipping random buttons, she turns on a fountain in the garden department. And Stripe's like, water. He says water more evilly than I've ever heard a word spoken by anyone in the entire history of anything.
Well, you've never heard the CEO of Nestle say water.
He says, touche. Yeah, but not as much of a bastard as that guy, because he's not trying to sell it. He just wants to swim in it. But he's like, water. And I'm like, you are a beast.
He finally crawls up the side of the water fountain. Billy's struggling in his feet.
It's done in slow-mo.
He's like, no!
Yeah, Billy's trying to stop him in slow-mo. And this is when we find out that Stripe still has the gun that he had from earlier, or he found another one in the department store.
No, it's the same one. No. It was.
I mean, they're all handguns.
No, it was one from the department store because he straight up said water, gun.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because
he grabs the gun and he runs towards the water fountain. And
when are we going to learn a glass case will not keep a gun out of the hand of a gremlin? The only thing that stops a bad gremlin with a gun is a good gremlin with a gun.
It's even worse when the gun in the case has bullets right beside it. Those are usually kept separately.
Handled. Yeah, maybe
it was
not,
the 80s.
Maybe not in the 80s, yeah. So he starts shooting at Billy. There's a great shot where he shoots a plant, and you hear this beautiful, like, noise. Good sound effects.
But then we see, finally, right before Billy's about to get shot in the fucking face like he deserves.
Don't think Billy's going to be the hero here. Obviously, he's not.
It's Gizmo who launches off the fucking snow shovel and crashes right into the sun, the little blinds, and rips open the sun.
Yeah, he rips open the blinds. Luckily, he falls in the shadow of a plant, or he would have
died.
Here's the thing. Gizmo willing to sacrifice himself in Stripe. Those two got a rivalry. But luckily he lands in the shadow of a plant, so he doesn't get melted. But who does? We get our last and probably most brutal murder in this entire show. We watch Stripe, as bubbles are forming in his back to
pop out more gremlins.
He melts in the most disgusting way.
It is so Evil Dead.
It is Evil Dead.
Very Evil Dead. The way that he looks when he's melting, it looks like a Deadite. Like the basement dwelling Deadite.
Oh, yeah.
From Evil Dead 2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And even when he jumps out as the jump scare, because Billy gets close to the fountain to see, and the fountain's beautiful because it's smoking and it's glowing green and white, and it was a beautiful fountain. I would love to have if I was rich, I'd have a fountain like that looked like a gremlin was churning in it. And then the skeleton kind of hops out one more time and then just turns
melts
into goo.
A puddle, yeah. And I was like, you gotta love those practical effects because that pulsating goo on the floor, it's such an 80s
The dog walks up to it and it pops and it runs away. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, because at this point, Rand and Barney have finally come back to town, and Rand's seeing all this shit go down right as they're about to kill Stripe. He's like, what's going on? And they hear the commotion, and so Barney runs out of the car to go try and help.
Yeah, the window's open. Dog dives out, goes in the department store.
Sees Gizmo and tries following him.
Randy, Randy goes after him and arrives just in time to do nothing, as you normally do. So yeah, they conquer all, and then we cut to
the not so cheery end of the movie.
We don't know how much time's passed, but they're back at home. Everyone's getting medical attention.
Mom's got bandages on her face.
Gizmo's bandaged up. Everyone except fucking Randall is bandaged up because he wasn't here.
Yeah,
Kate and Billy are all bandaged up. Gizmo's bandaged up. Mom's bandaged up, and they're watching the news.
Looks the happiest she had been the entire movie. I'll go ahead and say this: that near-death experience with the Gremlins made Moms feel alive. I will say that.
Well, that and she got her family here and safe.
Yep.
And nothing makes a mom happier than having their family.
Also, the fact that Mrs. Deagle, the landlord, is dead.
That problem's done.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about that for a little bit of the time being. The shitty bank owner is presumed dead. Because
they're watching the news and it says
all these death updates.
Little green men, mass hysteria, blah blah blah. Yeah, obviously. They're not going to say what happened because they don't know.
But we're getting these updates of people who were found... Like, they should have said that people had died.
Mrs. Deagle, yeah.
They did say that people
died.
They
mentioned Deagle by name. Dead. Dead, thank good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
couldn't have happened to a nicer gal.
Several civilians were hurt, injured, or maimed.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, so some people did fucking die, some people lived.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why they have an excuse to let Murray and his wife live. They might have just been maimed.
And Randall, Billy, Kate, and the mom, whose name I keep forgetting. One thing they didn't learn from this fucking thing is to lock your fucking door, because all of a sudden
Mr. Wing just walks in.
Mr. Wing is just, he's just standing there. Like, he just teleported in, but the door's open.
So. Yeah, well that's why it implies that he just
came in like a ninja, no sound, and basically reads him the right act.
Yeah, he's like, look, I never sold you that, and there was a reason I never sold it. And then he looks over and he sees the TV, and the TV is reiterating
Little Green Men.
And he's like, see, I knew that this would be a problem, and that's exactly why I didn't want to give this to you.
Yeah.
Because he gives him the right act about basically, I think
this is what you do with all of nature's gifts.
He leaves with a harsh lecture of how that's why he was never going to allow it, because they can't handle the responsibility. And just like most gifts Americans receive, they're given and they ruin them, but he at least let Gizmo say goodbye to them. He didn't have to.
Well, Gizmo asked.
He didn't have to, though.
He didn't, but it was very sweet because, he's carrying him out. And here's the thing.
It's just the duality.
Billy's looking at Randall, and he's like, dude, are you going to let him do this? And Randall kind of looks back at Billy like, yeah, I am. We fucked up. Once again, Randall showing maturity. I realize we aren't ready, which is what he says. He's like, you're not ready, maybe someday, not today.
Yeah.
And then as he's leaving, he's like, oh, he wants to say something to you. And Billy's like, you understand? He's like,
all you have to do is listen.
Yeah, which is made easier when Gizmo comes out and speaks English. Yeah. Goodbye, Billy. And my heart, it hurts. But you do get the glimmer of hope. He's like, maybe one day you'll be ready. Today, obviously, fucking not, but maybe one day.
If it wasn't for Gizmo wanting to say goodbye, he would have just left him with a fuck you, how'd he do?
Yeah.
It would have been
he does say you are not ready, and kind of a very... He seemed sorrowful when he said, he's like, you're not ready. Like, sorry, guys. Like, he didn't say sorry, but it was lecture, a moment of silence, and then you are not ready. Like,
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
And maybe I'm just reading it that way because I want the old man to be nice to him. Because, goddamn it, they were klutzy, but they tried.
And me, I understand.
And honestly, it's Corey Feldman's fucking fault. If he hadn't spilt that water, we never would have ended up here.
Oh, that was another thing during the Gremlins fight. We never talked about Corey Feldman fighting off those Gremlins with the scissors.
They're in his house. He's got he's basically
slingshot,
Dennis the Menacing it with a slingshot and takes out a comically large pair of scissors and cuts the Christmas lights that one's hanging from, and it swings down and knocks them all off the roof. And I'm like, good on you, Corey.
That was a little tidbit that it just briefly, because you don't see him in the rest of the movie after that.
No,
that's pretty much
you assume he makes it.
Him and his family.
Yeah,
but yeah, on that note,
Gremlins.
It's wrapped up. It's wrapped up with a very stern, hearty lecture that I believe stretches beyond the movie, and it's very apropos because I guess even to this day, our society, our American culture, hasn't quite learned that lesson.
Oh,
they haven't learned that lesson. It's like sometimes the things that others are afforded because their culture has been taught the respect of that thing, is why they have it and we don't.
Yeah. Please, listeners at home, don't appropriate Mogwai.
Yeah.
It's not safe. You're not... I'm not saying you're not wise enough. No one really is, except this one old guy I know who lives in Chinatown. So thank you.
Yeah, but overall, this movie, it didn't age the best, but it didn't age as bad as some of the other movies. It ages
way better than I thought it would.
I mean...
I honestly feel like for every reason where there's a cringe moment, there's a
thing to make up for that.
Yeah, like that person who does the cringe thing either learns to not do the cringe thing or gets murdered by a tractor. And either way, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I was like, that was definitely a hard lesson. But the people that deserve to die right from the out beginning of the movie, you're like, this person, they get theirs. Yeah. The people who deserve it get it. The people who are the most entertaining throughout the movie are like your semi-protagonists. And yes, while Billy isn't the best person, he at least has room to grow and learn.
He's small town dumb, but yeah, he does. Like, Kate is a great influence on him. Like, the more the movie goes, the more she is beating knowledge into his stupid thick head.
Like, he's small town dumb, but not ignorantly. He's not stubborn and unwilling to change and learn.
And that's honestly the real thing. It's not the thoughts that you have that make you a bad person. It's refusing to change the ones that are wrong to the detriment of everyone. Like, you know what? If you were raised racist and someone like fucking throws the facts at you and you stop being racist, well then goddamn, like that,
you can be redeemed.
Yeah, you can be redeemed. But if you refuse and double down on your racism, maybe we got a guillotine for you.
Yeah, you can't help
hypothetically
a metaphorical guillotine in
the info war. We have a guillotine for you, as our friends at Knowledge Fight would say,
because we fight knowledge.
Yes. All right, so that was Gremlins, a great legacy of small monster movies, a great legacy of the PG-13 rating system, and a great legacy of things that Steven Spielberg put his name on and didn't actually need to.
I have one final thing that
please give us a final thought.
I've been holding this off the entire movie because
is it which gremlin you would be? Which gremlin would you be?
Well, actually, I guess that makes sense two-parter now because you just introduced.
I always have to ask the question. I told you the two I would be and you guessed one of them: the ceiling fan and the one with the bags on his ears.
The first part to that question for you, I would say, question. I more than likely am probably going to be
the one with the duck puppet.
No. I'd more likely be the ski mask gremlin or Strike with a chainsaw.
Very cool.
Those are the two.
I could see you as both of them. Yeah.
But realistically, we both know my personality. I'm probably the gremlin with underwear on his face and the knife.
Very possible.
That's more than likely what.
Or the one who's basically under the beer tap and his belly's just getting bigger as he's just chugging down.
When I was a teenager, I would definitely agree. But nowadays,
I kind of wonder if he lived just because he was too drunk to get to the theater, and they're going to find him later. Saved by alcoholism.
I assume all the ones that left the bar lived and made it to the theater.
Probably the others, they carried him to the bar. They're like, we don't want you to die.
But my main thing was, throughout this whole movie, we're in a snowy winter wonderland.
Yeah.
You and I have had many snowy experiences throughout our lives growing up.
Yep.
What is the one thing that happens when you have snow on you and you go inside?
It turns into water. And
yes!
Soggy.
So, my question is, if all it takes is water to make the gremlins, why, when they were covered in snow and the snow melts on them and they're covered in wet water, why didn't that automatically make more gremlins?
It's true. You see very early on, there's a scene of, Stripe, in the snow, just kind of watching the chaos and then digging down into it like a burrowing badger or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would think all he'd have to do is stand in front of a space heater and...
water and
more gremlins.
Yeah. So that was, I guess, one glaring loophole that I had.
I did not think... I should have, but I never thought of that. And I guess there's a rule about water temperature. It can't be too cold. That would be very funny if it's and you can't get them wet unless it's 38 degrees or below. That water's okay.
It was just funny. It was one thing that I thought about. I was I know this is a dumb thing to harp on.
No, it's a bit of a loophole. You are correct.
And just the practical side of me that was it's basic science. You
know?
You're
covered in water. You're covered in...
if you put a pile of snow on his head...
I just figured it out. it was fake snow used for the movie, so it didn't.
But we're supposed to believe that this is a real world. This is a real world incident.
I'm obviously kidding.
But yes, yeah, that was pretty much all.
This was super fun, and I'm super glad we've now covered one of my favorites of all time.
Same.
And Gorship, next month you have set up something very special with Cecilia for us. Why don't you tell us a little something about that?
So for our next Judgmental Horror Junkies episodes, this is going to be a very special treat. We're going to do a crossover with the co-host of Comic Dissection, Cecilia Rose. And the reason why we're doing this crossover is I felt it was a very good opportunity this coming year to do something new for our podcast and meet halfway, because we all three are very passionate about what we listen to and believe in.
And we did have Gorship on Comic Dissection for our Sandman 2-parter.
Yeah, that was just a preamble to help you guys get the rust off.
Which you should definitely check out.
But we're going to start by Mr. Reno and I reviewing one of our own movies that we choose, and it's going to be The Menu with Anya Joy-Taylor.
Woot!
But immediately following that, we are also going to post the following week a International Women's Day special episode with Cecilia Rose and her movie choice, which is A Promising Young Woman. Now, I'm excited for both of these because I love Anya Joy-Taylor.
I love her so much.
I love her in The Witch, Queen's Gambit, pretty much anything she's done, I have loved. And
she's One Night in Soho too.
Yes.
Right? Yep. So good. And another one we could do for our horror podcast.
That's another great theme. And the purpose of our crossover episode is to give the female empowerment perspective of horror and the horror genre. And it's...
My suggestion was to just mansplain it. But Gorship recommended maybe we get a female voice in here instead. And I was like, if you think
rather than letting Dick swing out, I'd rather hear what...
if we have to.
I'd rather hear the perspective of the female-centric theories of how horror and the flexion it's had on female-led horror genres has gone. And I think she made a perfect choice by choosing Promising Young Woman.
Yes, with a strong female protagonist. And The Menu, which also has a lot of ladies in it. We'll see how they fare.
And you'll notice the difference. There will be a difference between our take on The Menu and her take on Promising Young Woman.
Absolutely.
So those are two very cool things that we have coming down the pipeline that I was excited to help line up. And I really look forward to because I love getting to talk with two of these people. They're some of the best people I've ever gotten to hang out with.
We're great!
And I just really love getting to do this. So the more time we get to spend crossing over and collaborating and mixing and mingling our interests, is an even better time.
Oh yeah, anytime.
So hopefully anybody that listens to the future episodes will feel the same way as us.
Yes, if you're a listener to either Judgmental Horror Junkies or Comic Dissection, I highly suggest you check the other one out because there's a crossover with Gorship and Cecilia Rose and myself, and the three of us. Well, we're goddamn gifts, so appreciate us.
And now let's end this on a funny note. Hey Reno.
What's up?
What do you call a pirate that pees on people?
I don't know, Gorship. What do you call a pirate that pees on people?
R. Kelly. All right, everybody, have a good day.